This is Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Mitch LaFon.
Welcome to another episode of Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Joining me on this episode, it is the return of drummer Mickey Curry. We talk about Live Aid and all kinds of other stuff. But before that, on the phone from the Beat 92.5 in Montreal, it is our number one on air, or hair. I mean, I don't have any. Or hair. Host.
Both of them apply.
Both of them apply. It is the mighty Jeremy White. Good day, Sir White. How are you?
Good day, sir. I'm sure my employer is going to love the fact that you gave out the shout-out, so that's great.
Yeah, and listen, folks have maybe been following me or you on Twitter and Instagram, have been seeing us together at all kinds of events.
They've seen us at, like, everything.
Yeah, I mean, Sammy Hagar, Alice Cooper's coming up. We've done Billy Idol and Bryan Adams, Oceaga, Heavy Montreal, just everywhere. So you have become the de facto touring partner. But before we get over to Mickey Curry today, what did you think of that Billy Idol and Bryan Adams show that we saw together recently? I mean, was it not just epic, for the lack of a better word?
Well, the only reason I'm making an appearance on this show is because you called me out on your last interview at the beginning of it, so that's the only reason I'm here. Also, I'm sure all of your fans that follow you on social see pictures of you and I together. They're like, oh, who's this ugly fat chick that Mitch is hanging out with? So that's also the other reason I'm here. I'm not the ugly fat chick. I'm the ugly fat radio guy.
The radio guy. That's right. You could be a good...
So I got to tell you, man, that concert, Billy Idol and Bryan Adams was, I think, you actually summed it up really nicely. You called it the best package tour of summer 2019. And after what we saw in Syracuse, I got to tell you, man, like, that is a great way to sum it up. It was just hit after hit after hit. Sound was fantastic. They just looked like they were having a blast. You couldn't beat it. You couldn't beat it. You and I had a blast. I know that.
I know. And you and I got to deliver, along with a buddy of mine named Joe, some cheesecake to Billy Idol's band, and then some cheesecake over to Bryan Adams' band. Wasn't that kind of cool?
Yeah, Steve Stevens was looking at that cheesecake and was like, I shouldn't eat this, but I am. And he ate like 4 or 5 pieces of it. It was so good. So shout out to Joe. And what is it, Big Mama's Cheesecake?
Big Mama's Cheesecake in Syracuse, yeah. And by the way, while we were doing the interview with Mickey Curry, the room next door, now this is the one where I had a kick. Bryan Adams was recording some songs. And he was doing Sweet Dreams. I mean, I don't know if you can pick it up on the interview. I'll check that as the tape rolls. But it was like, oh, Bryan Adams is singing Sweet Dreams. I mean, holy crap.
Yeah. Well, when you went outside to go pick up the cheesecake, I was standing in the band's dining room, which is where you recorded the interview. So when I was in there, Bryan had his little guitar rack set up. And I just give you an idea of what the dressing room looked like. It wasn't even the dressing room. It was called the band's dining room. So they had like the little fridge with the Gatorades and the Red Bulls, and they had like the espresso machine. But then in the corner, you had Bryan's basically guitar rack, like a big acoustic guitar, it looked like a Gibson, and he had like a Fender Precision bass. So they were both standing in there. And then when you and I went upstairs to bring the cheesecake, when we came back, the acoustic was gone. So we totally missed Bryan in that 10-minute span of us leaving that little room. We would have totally had a little run-in with him.
I know, but hey, listen, you got to interview him in, I guess, January earlier this year. But
yeah,
but what a checklist you and I have checked off this year. I mean, we Bryan Adams, Sammy Hagar, Gary Cherone. You know, at that M3 festival where we got to meet Gary Cherone, there was an other very famous guy there that we hoped to meet, but unfortunately they cleared out the back area and wouldn't let anyone within 80 feet of the individual.
Yes, a certain somebody. I don't think we're allowed to say his name, but he's the singer of the headliner on one of the nights, and he has a very fancy sounding accent.
Yes,
yeah.
But can we maybe talk to his uncle, Jeremy Coverdale? Is that possible?
Oh, let me see. Hello, Mitch. How are you?
Oh, quite well, young chap.
You should feel very privileged that I've taken some time out of my busy schedule of tweeting and drinking very fancy red wine to make an appearance on your peasants-only listening podcast,
It is a fabulous podcast. By the way, is that is that Jeremy Stanley standing behind you?
Hold on 1 second. I don't believe it. Hello, Mitch. How are you?
Good. Are you ready for the Montreal show coming up this month?
You know, Mitch, I'm so excited for Montreal. It's one of my favorite places ever, especially because you guys have opened your hearts and opened your legs to us so many times over the years. Merci beaucoup.
Oh, there we go. Should we, Scooty, mosey on over to Mickey Curry? I mean, by the way, isn't he just a fabulous drummer?
I'm just going to tell you before we go, everything that you want, Kiss, you could buy. Just give me all your money. We'll take all your money. Gene isn't the one to tell you, but I want all your money, too, okay?
Yeah, well, hey, why not? There's plenty of it to go around. But Mickey Curry, after the interview, you had a nice chat with him, Mr. Jeremy White. You had a nice chat with him about gear. Do you want to relate a little bit of the gear chat you had?
Hold on, I'm trying to knock off my really posh British accent.
Well, Jeremy Coverdale could certainly tell us about it.
It'd probably be a lot funnier if I did it in the British accent.
Yes.
But, you know, we were just talking about, because I'm a really big Mutt Lange fan. Like, I have a PhD in the guy, and that was the majority of my interview with Bryan. Like, that's what it kind of was about. Like, talking about the recording process, writing songs, and I remember in your last interview with Mickey, he told you a story about how he was just like sweating buckets before he went into a session with Mutt. Like, this was in like the mid-'90s when they did Really Love a Woman.
Right.
And he went in and he was like, all right, I guess we'll just do it. And then he did one take, and then Mutt came back on the talk back and was like, okay, yeah, I think we got it. And Mickey was like, what? So we were talking about that story, but we were talking more like technical stuff about like you know, what it was like recording Reckless. Like, obviously he split duties with Pat on that record, and what it was like kind of putting together that drum sound, because they recorded at two different studios, right? They recorded that Little Mountain, and I think it was Power Station in New York.
Yeah, I believe.
Was it Power Station?
I believe so, or maybe it was all Little Mountain, but
yeah. Well, no, because he was saying that they went back and forth, and I made a comment on how it all sounds like one studio, like the consistency of the drum sound between studio to studio was fantastic. And he was like, yeah, that was all, you know, Claremont. He really put that all together. And he was giving me like the kind of like the visual of how they recorded those drums in Little Mountain. Like, they would basically create an alleyway or like a hallway from the drum kit into the loading bay using these baffles. It almost looked like an L shape, he said. And they would direct the sound of the drums into the loading bay, and then they would set up microphones in there. But he was also saying that Claremont would do some little tricks of like basically putting a speaker or a PA system and send the sound into there, or into like a really, really ambient stairwell, almost like a fire evacuation stairwell. And they would mic it up in there to get even more reverb and like live ambience to like a really dead sounding drum kit. So apparently a lot of the drum tone from that record came from obviously the loading bay, but also that stairwell at Power Station, which I thought was super interesting. I'm like, and as a recording guy, I was like, I would have never thought to go and throw a speaker into a stairwell and re-mic it and then use that as the reverb. Yeah, or an alleyway, you know?
You know, I think we've lost a little bit of that, because now with all the Pro Tools and all the presets and all that, you just click a button and you can get those kind of effects, but that sort of creativity that goes behind it and thinking about these things, I think that's what added charm to those records, because it was a labor of love more than just like, oh, I'm just going to click this button here. There we go.
But you also got to remember, at the time, there wasn't technology. Now, you know, kids are going to recording school, or so-called, you know, I'm doing like air quotes, recording school. You know, they're like, oh, you want that Bryan Adams, you want that Mutt Lange Adrenalized snare? All right, let's just load up the Mike Shipley preset and that Waves R-verb, and we'll have the cannonball snare. Whereas back in the day, they didn't have the technology. So the fact that they were creative enough to go and throw a speaker into, you know, a stairwell and then put a microphone in there to create ambience for a drum kit. I mean, at the time, I mean, you could kind of call it revolutionary.
Well, it was, and that's that's sort of my point, that I think we've become lazy in our record making, because it's just, I'm going to push a button rather than, well, I need this sound. Yeah. It's in my head. How do I get it out of my head and onto this vinyl? And we don't do that anymore.
1,000%.
Anyway,
nobody's doing anything like that anymore. So yeah, shout out to the original engineers. If Mutt Lange happens to hear this, call me. Let's go for lunch. Seriously, we won't see photos either. I promise.
Well, Jim Valens perhaps might hear this, because I have a tendency to send the Mickey Curry or any Bryan Adams related stuff to Jim for him to check out as well. And would
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so hopefully I would love it. He's one of the greatest. Would Jeremy Stanley like to introduce Mickey Curry today?
People, this guy right here, he knows how to hit. And when I want to hit, you know what? Forget it. Just go to the interview. I don't even know what I want to say.
Well, let's do it.
You know what? Paul Stanley's probably going to charge us for even saying his name, so maybe we should just go to the interview.
It was Jeremy Stanley, but let's go. All right, let's do it my way then.
Yeah, right.
Let's do it let's do it the Mitch LaFon trademark way. Here is the one, the only, and yes, for you, Steve Brown, the mighty Mickey Curry. We are here in Syracuse, New York, backstage with Mickey Curry, drummer for Bryan Adams. Also spent some time with everybody, including Hall & Oates. You've done some work with Helix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Scratch Band. Yeah. And, you know what? Let's start off with the Scratch Band. That was your original band.
Yeah.
With G.E. Smith, I believe.
G.E. was in the band, yep. Initially, that would have been 75. Yep. I started working with Scratch Band right out of high school. And G.E. was the guitar player. Paul Lasola played bass. Bob Orsi, guitar, piano, vocals, and Christine Ullman, who's great singer, was lead singer. And I was in the band till summer of 1980. GE had left a year or two earlier than that. He was doing lots of work in New York, and I sort of hooked up with him again later, a couple of years later, with Hall & Oates.
Right.
So
talk to me just real quick, because we know the success you've had with all these bands, Hall & Oates. What was it like trying to set up an original band? What were some of the challenges you faced where you said, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll just go play for Bryan. Maybe I'll just go play for Hall & Oates and not try to do my own band.
Yeah, I don't know. The Scratch Band we were great. It was we did a lot of sort of stuff at the time. Everybody was playing disco songs, and if you wanted to work, you had to play top 40. And we did a lot of, we were playing a lot of reggae stuff, a lot of kind of off the wall, lots of old R&B, and I don't know why it wasn't sort of going. We had a bunch of original songs. We had a couple of records we did ourselves, and it just felt like it wasn't really going anywhere for me. So I thought, if I can just get some session work going elsewhere, and maybe one thing will lead to another. But I really wanted to just do session work. I wanted to do recording. So I started going into New York. I was getting a couple of calls for showcases, and a guy, Peter Lubin, who worked for Mercury Records at the time, was a fan of the Scratch Band, and he called and said he had a band in New York called Tom Dickey and the Desires. Mm-hmm. And
Tommy Mottola.
Tommy Mottola managed them, that's right. And I had just done GE's record, his solo record, at the Power Station. I think it was late that 1980 or something. And I went into New York and worked with Tom Dickey at Electric Lady. Tommy Mottola was managing them, and he came down to a session and asked if I'd be interested in staying, coming back the following week or whatever to work with Hall & Oates. They were doing a record, which ended up being the Private Eyes record. And then while I was doing the Private Eyes record, Bob Clearmountain, who had done GE's record, called and said he had this guy from Canada he wanted me to play drums. So that was Bryan. So within, a month, I had both of those gigs going on at the same time. And I thought, this is great. It's session work, it's recording. I wasn't committing to play live with anybody. But while the Private Eyes sessions were going on, Daryl Hall asked me if I'd be interested in touring. And I said, sure, that summer, I went out with GE to promote his record. We did a month and a half across America opening for Squeeze, which was me too. I'm such a fan. Yeah, Gilson Lavis is a great drummer. That was really fun. I met Paul Carrick on that tour.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I love him, and he's great. And then in the fall, I was out with Daryl and John, and that ran for the next 6 or 7 years or something. Right. I was with them.
And I want to ask you also about their producer. But before that, I forget his name, Neil Kernon.
Neil was fantastic engineer. Yeah, Neil got great drum sounds. And, if you listen to those records, the Private Eyes record has such a great, big, flat, fat drum sound. Mm-hmm. I really love that. He made really good use of that room at Electric Lady. I was thrilled to death with the sounds he got. But Neil's a real great set of ears, a real rock guy, and he was great to work with. So I enjoyed that. And, at the same time I was working with Clear Mountain, either up at the power station or down there at Electric Lady as well. And he's amazing, for drum sounds,
Well, I actually want to take you up on Neil, because when you think of great producers, we think Mutt Lange, we think Bob Rock, we think Bob Ezrin, Rick Rubin, and that Neil name doesn't come up a lot in those conversations. Now you look at the fact that he's got 100 gold and platinum records, he's got everybody from jazz to metal to death metal to.
He's one of those guys. He's in the room, but he's not a big giant presence in the room. Right. He was at the mixer board. He would put up those sounds. You'd go do a track. You'd get a smile, or that sounds great, or let me fix that snare drum for you, or he was just amazing to work with. There was no pressure or no sort of quirkiness or weirdness or anything. He just got great drum sounds. Those tracks, those basic tracks on those Hall & Oates records were what the records ended up sounding like. They didn't do a lot of
overdubbing.
Not a lot of stuff. The stuff was right off the floor, and Neil was the guy doing it.
The best.
Yeah. And, you had a great, you got guys like T-Bone Walk, and the Private Eyes record was John, I knew I was going to do this. Played bass.
It was the John. Don't you know who John is, John. Right?
Anyway, and GE, of course, and Daryl playing piano and John Oates playing guitar, and those tracks just sort of sounded like that when we recorded them, It was a big thrill. But Neil was absolutely fantastic to work with. I really loved those sessions,
Yeah, I'm just amazed that we don't consider him in the same pantheon. Because you look at the success, you go, well, why are we saying Bob Ezrin is great? He is, but why aren't we saying Neil's great at the same time? I don't know since you mentioned drum sound a couple of times, what do you think is a key to getting a good drum sound? Is it just miking?
I think the miking has a lot to do with it, but I think the guy who's recording you has to sort of...
Does he have to be a drummer?
Not necessarily, although most of the drummer sort of engineer guys I've worked with, they get it pretty quick. Our guys live, Rob Nevelainen is our monitor mixer, and he's a drummer, and he gives me this mix every night. It's a drummer, throwing the sounds into your cans. I don't know. I think, miking is important, and just sort of getting, if the drum sounds good in the room, it should sound good on tape.
Right.
It should sound good coming through the speakers. It should sound like it sounds. And Clear Mountain was always really good at that. Bob Rock is really good at that. Frank Filippetti is really good at that.
Some classic names. You've done a lot of great albums.
Those guys. T-Bone Burnett's really good at that. Getting that. Mitchell Froome is really good at that. Just getting that live sound, and just sort of controlling it enough, right, in the mix. So. Yeah.
Let me get over to Live Aid. It is one of the most culturally significant things. Of course, Bryan Adams was there, but you weren't with Bryan.
No, I saw him. We saw him in catering. We were throwing stuff at each other, screaming and yelling. We were all so excited to be part of this thing. Everybody's hugging and jumping on the tables and screaming. We were like monkeys It was really, really fun. Live Aid was so much fun.
Right.
And exciting,
So let's explore that, because how did you get into it just with a band? Let me rephrase that. But for most people, a gig is a gig, and then this thing became larger than life. So when did you get a sense that we're not just playing a show in Philadelphia. This is going to have a cultural significance for years to go.
Yeah. Well, you do a lot of sort of festival shows. You do a lot of, especially in the summertime, there's always you're doing shows where there are 30 other bands on the same weekend you're on, or, so you sort of get used to that. But this was different. We knew that, this was going out to a huge TV audience. Mm-hmm. It was a big cause. It meant a lot. Mm-hmm. The biggest names ever were going to be part of this thing. And we knew, and I'm referring to me and T-Bone and GE.
The Hall & Oates guys.
The Hall & Oates guys. We knew that we were going to be on stage for an hour. So
you did an hour set?
Almost. We were on with Eddie Kendrick and David Ruffin came on from The Temptations. First we started with Hall & Oates, then Eddie and David came on. We did a set of Temptations. Okay. And then Mick Jagger came on.
With Tina.
Well, he came on alone first, and we did a song with him, and then Tina came out. So we felt like we were like the house band, We had to learn all these arrangements and funny things. But we did have a rehearsal the night before at SIR in New York. And Mick was amazing. He made sure everybody was cool and we all knew what we were doing. And Tina, was great. And they sort of worked out all their moves and steps. And between Eddie and David and Daryl and John, it was really cool. But yeah, we were on stage for a while. And we knew it was going to be a big deal. Just, you get in a stadium anywhere like that. It's really exciting. You got 80,000 people in front of you and another, a billion people watching from somewhere.
I was watching.
Yeah.
He wasn't born.
Yeah. The most exciting thing for me, though, was when Phil Collins came and played. He had played in London and then he flew and played. And I got to sit. I was sitting right sort of behind him off the side of the stage watching him play. He played with Tony Thompson, who was one of my all-time favorite guys, and I loved him. But to watch those two guys work together, Phil Collins is, beyond words. He was such a great. He's the drumming on everything he did is frighteningly good. Yeah. But anyway, to watch that was the big highlight of my Live Aid thing. I mean, being on stage was great. Playing, and working with Jagger and Tina, it was fun. But watching Phil Collins play.
And you say that so casually, working with Mick Jagger.
Well, the thing, I had done a couple of songs with Mick on his first. He did a solo record, and we did a couple of songs. And I had worked with Tina, with Bryan, and that's right, so we knew each other enough to look at each other and say hello. Mick would kind of, I think I know who you are. Yeah, hi. I'll say hi to you. But, Live Aid was something else, man. It was really something.
Do you think in this day and age, 2019 going on to 2020, that artists have lost that kind of social consciousness? Do we need to be doing more of that? Because we haven't really had a Live Aid since then.
No, but I mean, look at Woodstock 50 fell apart. Like, how did that fall apart?
Well, honestly, I would say maybe because a lot of the artists were a little selfish. It was all about money, and but prestige.
Woodstock is the one that changed the world, right? I mean, yes, Live Aid was important, but Woodstock was sort of the first thing, massive musical thing. You get 500,000 people in a field somewhere for 3 days. It's amazing. But I don't know. I think people are still socially conscious, but you're probably right. It always comes down to money and logistics and, trying to put things together for a cause. I don't know. I don't know why there aren't more things like that now. I wish there were. There should be. There should be.
There really should be.
Yeah.
And remind me, because I'm actually blanking, did you play on Northern Lights or Band-Aid?
No.
Neither one?
No.
Okay. So then let me start talking about some of the Canadian bands, because you are an American drummer.
Yeah.
And your discography includes work with Celine Dion, Helix, obviously Bryan.
Yeah.
And one that I'm not too clear on, but it says you've done additional percussion on Honeymoon Suite's The Big Prize. Yeah. Which is my favorite Canadian. Well, no, Reckless is my favorite Canadian. and Tom Cochrane. So how did this sort of American drummer get to be the Canadian go-to guy, if I can sort of contextualize it that way?
Well, that's flattering, but I don't know about that.
Hey, Celine Dion, Tom Cochrane.
Hey, $50 is $50.
Right. We saw a shirt like that.
All right. And $50 Canadian is $30 American. So, no, I think what happened was when I first came up to Vancouver to Little Mountain with Bryan, Bob Rock was there. He was the guy there. He was always at Little Mountain working on everything. And we just got to know each other and we sort of became friends. And he started calling. And, Bruce Allen managed a lot of what was going on in Vancouver. He had his,
Everything.
Everything.
Like Chilliwack, Loverboy.
Everything. So I think between that connection, the phone would ring and, hey, can you come up to Vancouver for a few days? The Honeymoon Suite thing, that record, they had recorded everything, but they wanted to replace the drums on a few of the songs. They weren't happy with the drums.
Which ones? Because they do one song with Ian Anderson.
Yeah.
All Along You Knew on the album.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember the specific songs. All I remember is coming up there. We had the drum set up, and Bob asked me. It was Bruce Fairbairn and Bob, I think. Bob was the one I talked to, though. He said, some of these tracks are all over the place, and what I'm hoping is that you can sort of smooth out the transitions between, So I thought, okay. So I would play along to these pre-recorded tracks, and I think I probably did 8 or 10 songs. Wow. So it was probably most of the record.
It's their greatest sounding record.
Well,
sonically.
Yeah, and they are the nicest guy. I love Derry. Derry is one of my all-time favorite guys.
Yes.
Yeah, I love him to death. As a matter of fact, he called or emailed or something a few years ago and said, we're going to do another record. It'd be great if we could get. And of course, I was out here on the road with Bryan, and I couldn't do it as much as I would love to. But I loved that Honeymoon Suite stuff, and I loved those guys. They were they were great. So that was that, and then Bob, the Rock and Hide thing. I worked on that record.
Dirty Water
with Paul. Yeah, fantastic. Paul's incredibly gifted, and Bob's a joy to work with. So that was fun. What else did I do out of there? A Helix. I don't know how
Walking the Razor's Edge, I believe it was. The name of the album? Yeah.
Which, the Helix record?
Yeah. It was Walking the Razor's Edge, wasn't it?
I think it was.
It's the red one.
Heavy Metal Love? Or maybe that was a song. I don't know. I only did 2 songs. I went up to Toronto and worked with you. I worked with Luba as well.
Yes, I know that.
That was fun.
She actually lived in the city next to us, and every time we'd go to the pharmacy, or every time.
Yeah.
Often.
You'd see her.
I'd bump into her.
Oh, nice. She was very sweet.
Her guitarist, Jeff Smallwood.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy Vivino, we were on the same flight up there, and we were sitting next to each other, and we didn't realize we were both going to the same session. So after about 20 minutes on the plane, we started talking, and I realized, oh my God, this is Jimmy Vivino, and we were going to the same studio to work together, which was pretty.
In Montreal?
Yeah. But I'm trying to think of the other Canadian records you referred to. Tom Cochrane we did in Memphis.
Very
at Ardent, yeah, with Joe Hardy, who sadly missed. Terrible, but that was fun. Spider, Sinead played bass on that.
Spider, the one with Holly Knight?
He's with Loverboy now, but he worked with Tom for years, and Spider's a great bass player.
Oh, the bass player, not the band.
No, Spider, he's Canadian, proud Canadian.
But ultimately, what I want to get to is talking about how going into a session, doing these different styles. How do you sort of prepare as a drummer, or is Mickey just Mickey?
I think that it's more that I go in a nervous wreck,
right?
And I go in thinking this is the session where these people are going to know that I don't have any idea what I'm doing. These are the guys that are going to know I'm faking all of this.
Right.
I'm just trying to channel, Jim Keltner or Jeff Porcaro or John Bonham or Ginger Baker or Keith Moon. You're trying to channel whoever you need to be for that particular track, that song, the vibe of the thing, or And to this day, that's me. As soon as I sit down at the drum kit, I think, this is the next 3 minutes are going to prove to everyone that I have no idea what I'm doing. This is where they all figure it out, that I'm just a hack, and I'm working really hard to get through this without anybody knowing that I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, since you started in 75, it's like 45 years of, years of being a hack, a very well-paid hack.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the well-paid part. Like I said, $50 Canadian doesn't go very far anymore. But I've always been that guy. You know, you walk into the room and you don't want to be the weak link in the chain.
Right.
You don't want to be the one that, doesn't know what he's doing. I don't know if I prepare all that much. You listen to demos. I write myself a couple of little cheat sheets and a note here and there, just for arrangements and.
But do you spend time listening to Honeymoon Suite's previous album or Celine's previous album?
Yeah, like when I went in to do the Cult record,
right, which we want to talk about. Too.
Yeah, Sonic Temple. I was a big fan of theirs, first of all. So I did that a lot. I would make sure I had an idea of sort of. But how can you not know Celine Dion before you go into a session?
Right.
How can you not?
Honeymoon Suite and Helix, you may not.
Yeah, Helix I was not all that familiar with. I knew they were a big sort of metal hard rock Canadian band, and those guys were so much fun.
Brian's great.
Yeah. They were so much fun, and I was in the studio for a couple hours with them, but it was so much fun to work on a project like that. That was a bit out of my wheelhouse at the time. That big metal thing.
Well, have you ever had a session where you just go, this is not me?
I worked with David Sanborn once, and I couldn't do it. I completely failed. Yeah, there was the song was in a funny time. It was either in 5 or 7 or something, and I went completely blank.
Really?
I couldn't move my hands. I froze. I had such a block. I was sweating and I was scared, and it was that session. It was the one everyone dreads. Well, you walk into the room, you sit down at the kit, and you cannot play this piece of music. I didn't have the technique or facility to do it.
Does it still bother you to this day?
It bothers me, but I hear the song now, and I can do it with one hand. Now, I just drew this. I had this block. I was so it was really intimidating. I love David Sanborn, right. But Anthony Jackson came in and blew through this bass part like he did it. He did it once. Yeah, just unbelievable how great he was. He blew through the chart, and Philippe Says produced the session, and they were so kind and nice to me. So it ended up, we tried for a little while. I wasn't getting anywhere. So they went, that's okay. They sampled the drum sounds, and they programmed a part with my sounds, and they just made the record with that. And what makes that amazing to me is 8 months later, David Sanborn sent me a gold record. The album went gold, and they sent me one. And I literally had...
Did he charge you?
Yeah. I literally had nothing to do with the record, but he was so nice to do that. Did he charge me?
Well, because people don't know that for gold records you got to pay like $700 or something.
I can't believe he did that. I was part of that project, and it was so kind and nice. I'll never forget that. But that was sort of it was moment? Yeah, it was a really cold, hard slap in the face. You've got to know what you're doing before you walk in the room. If you think it's going to be beyond sort of your capability, let somebody else do it.
Okay, so what is beyond your ability? Like, what kind of style of drumming could you not handle? Because we talked about Neil doing death metal and stuff like. You're not a blast beat kind of guy, I guess.
But I could probably fake something depending on the song and the tempo and sort of what they were going. I'm not really good with sort of up-tempo swing as much as I love it, or like a big band thing. Right. I would love to be able to do it, but it's just not my thing, I'm way more comfortable with that sort of simple 4 on the floor, just set a groove, and it's all about groove for me. But some of this stuff is technically, a lot of things I hear now, you just go, I don't know how. You've got to be really good to do that, and it's beyond my. We all have. I think we're all limited in sort of our technical. Yeah. So, but I always wished I could do that sort of really up-tempo swing stuff, and it's just, I can't. I sit down and work on it, and it just doesn't come. So, I'm at a point now where it's just play where I'm comfortable,
Right. Stay with Bryan. So let's, before we wrap up, I want to do Bryan and the call. Well, I don't want to do Bryan. That's wrong. But that's the wrong word right there. No, but Bryan has, and maybe this is wrong, but I feel he's sort of changed his sound over the years. He's gotten away from Kids Wanna Rock and sort of gotten to more like Cloud Number 9 and more. I don't want to say it's softer, but it's not. How much input do you have in any of that sound and creating any of the songs, or is it just, hey, you're the drummer, play these? Because I'm imagining that you're not just the hired gun at this point.
Bryan, he always comes in. He's usually got a demo of the song, and we kind of try to stick to the vibe of the demo. So yeah, a lot of times it's just play whatever you do, it'll be great. Or it's I really love this pattern, or I really love this fill, or I really love this hi-hat bit, or so let's keep that and just do that. Jim Valance, who's an amazing drummer, plays on a lot of the demo stuff.
Originally with Prism.
Yes, and he also worked on the Tom Jones show when he was in Canada, and Jim, he was the house guy on that, and it's phenomenal. Oh my God, what a great drummer. And the sweetest guy, he's great. But he plays on a lot of the stuff, so I love the way he plays. So I love copying his demos. So a lot of times that's what I'll do. I'll just sort of take the vibe, the gist of what he's got going, and do it how I sort of do it, where it's comfortable for me. And most of the time that works for Bryan. But yeah, as far as the getting out of the sort of harder rock thing and maybe a little more pop,
contemporary, or whatever.
I don't know. He's done so many different sort of styles of things. He's really good at the R&B thing. His covers record is so good. We were listening the other day to Kiss and Say Goodbye, and the version was so, his vocal is scary good, and everybody plays it so beautifully. Bob Rock engineered that, and David Foster produced that record. So
there's another.
You had some. Yeah, there's David Foster. There's a guy, huh?
Yep.
Come on. What a.
Do you wish that before it's all over, that we do sort of a Reckless Part 2, not to call it that, but, a hard rock and just say...
I don't know.
Are we all past that?
No, I think we could all do it if the songs were there, and you get everybody in the room, and no one's opposed to doing that. I just don't know, how... we're recording all the time. Bryan's always doing something. He's always got something going on, so... you never know. Some of these things might come up again, that kind of vibe,
I'll ask you sort of the unfair question, but is it sort of where the inspiration takes it, or is it sort of a marketplace concern?
I think it's... Sorry, Gare. It's kind of...
And I know it's an unfair question.
No, I think for Bryan, it's all about inspirational, I don't think it's got to do with trying to sell records for Bryan anymore. It's really about just making
gets him off, in a sense.
Really good music, What he enjoys writing and singing.
Well, Shine a Light's a great album.
Shine a Light's a great record. Yeah,
it really is.
That track was so much fun to do. We just flew into. We did it. It was just the two of us on the track, and we did it at Power Station. We hadn't been there in years, so I walk in and the drums are there, and the room is the same, and the control room's the same, and we just had so much fun that afternoon putting drums on that track. It was really fun. I mean, it's a very simple, basic drum part, but it was so much fun doing it.
But it translates to the live stage. I've seen 3 shows now since you've put it out, and it fits right in between Somebody and Run To, and you don't.
So yeah, it's
you don't go, oh, it's the new song, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, we were talking. Somebody I was talking to Bruce Allen the other day about that, and how bands go out and all they want to do is their new songs.
Right.
You know, people come to hear your hits. That's what they're coming to see you for. That's what I think. And
no, you're right.
He's really aware of that, you know, so we do the big ones. And then, you know, he's got some great new songs. So if they fit the show, they're in.
It does.
You know, and we put them in, and we love playing them, you know. Shine a Light's a blast to play. It's really simple, but it's really fun.
And the other one was Ultimate Love, I think. That one fits too.
Unfortunately,
the greatest hits.
Yeah, we don't have time now with Billy. You know, we're limited for time, so that one kind of got canned. Okay. Yeah, but we'll be doing it again. Yeah, that's really fun to play too. That's kind of I'm channeling Ringo, I think, on that one. Just open those hats and
off you go.
And go. So anyway.
Oh, actually, you know, that brings talking to Ringo, and we spoke about Mick Jagger and of course Charlie Watts. Yeah. What's your sort of take or philosophy on the kit? Because there is the very sort of minimalistic Ringo Starr, Charlie Watts, and then there's the, you know, Scott Rockenfield of Queensryche and Neil Peart, 87 What sort of over the top. So where do you sort of see yourself in that? Are you less is more, more is more?
Yeah, right. Lately, you know, and you've seen my kit. It's pretty basic. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got 2 floor toms because I get lost down there, so I need another drum to go to. So I've always had a second floor tom. Right. But I've been through the double bass drum. You know, a lot of the Hall & Oates stuff was 2 kick drums, 3 racks, a whole, you know, Simmons pad kit next to the hats, and, you know, all the electronic. Yeah. All the, you know, we went through all those phases of.
Well, the 80s was all Simmons pads.
And trying to, you know, do the big drum kit thing. But a lot of and Bryan too, a lot of those early records had big tom fills, you know. So, you know, all of that stuff was essential. You know, you needed 3 racks to do the, you know, Cuts Like a Knife fills and the Summer 69 fills and, you know, all that. But the last, maybe I'm going to say 10 or 12 years, we've just pared it down. Bryan likes the look of a smaller kid on stage. He likes a sort of cleaner stage with not a lot of gear. Yeah. And if I can cover those songs with the kit being as minimal as I can make it, then that's what we do. So I'm pretty comfortable with the kit as it is. I mean, you know, I cover those big sort of flammy tom things with what I have now, and it works. You know, it's working fine.
Yeah,
and I love the Yamaha made this kit for me this past year, and it's just such a beautiful. It's a hybrid maple shell. They're just absolutely beautiful. I love them. So, you know, if I can get away with a smaller, you know, less stuff on stage, then we do it. Less is more. Yeah, I mean, you know, you need a cowbell and a rivet cymbal. That's my, and you need those 15-inch hi-hats. That's for me essential.
Yeah.
So.
And we'll finish with this because we're at half an hour. But Sonic Temple, when we did an interview in July, they hadn't announced this 30th anniversary 5-CD deluxe holy moly thing coming out in September. So let's just revisit that. Now, first of all, what do you think of this 5-CD with all these demos? And because now everything you've played on and everything Eric Singer played on and everything in who's the other guy? There was 3 drummers.
It was Eric and
I believe his name was Other Guy, Mr. Other Guy. But is it going to be interesting for you to sit down and have this 5-CD package and maybe? In fact, would you bother listening to it and compare how the? Okay.
No, I mean, I don't know how much analyzing I would do, but I'd be interested to hear these other things. I remember hearing the Eric Singer demos.
Right.
And I couldn't believe how good they were. And they wanted something, you know, it was like, well, yeah, it's good, but we want to. So, you know, I had to sort of come up with stuff. But I remember hearing the demos going, this stuff is so good now. You know, I'm just gonna ruin it. So let me ruin your tracks for you. Yeah, and you're gonna pay me in Canadian, right? So no. So I can't wait to hear some of these things. You know, I mean, Billy's they're really creative guys. Ian's got a million ideas, and it'll be really fun to see what they have come up with. I just don't know how much. I can't believe there's that much stuff around that record, around that album. but I think we probably recorded a lot more stuff than was put out. I'm sure there were other tracks. But, I guess if it's alternate takes and things like that, that stuff's always interesting, Yeah. So it'll be fun to hear it.
And what's one of your greatest memories of playing on what ends up being sort of their it record? Because you played it basically on the 30 years of the it record.
Yeah. The one memory I have is when we did Firewoman, and there's that little drummy breakdown middle 8-bit, a bridge part. And I remember thinking, I have no idea what I'm supposed to come up with here. Because anything I come up with is not going to be very impressive. And, okay, well, so I remember Bob Rock saying, just whatever comes to you, play. And then we'll go back in, and I will we'll do, 30 fills. Right. And I'll put them together and make it. Right. So I think what they ended up with was actually the first sort of pass through. Right. Because it had that sort of edginess, and the drummer doesn't know what he's doing, but he's going to keep playing through this. And
9 hours later.
Yeah. No, I mean, just on that, it was like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'll just keep going. And until they stop the tape, I think it'll be okay. So that's what we ended up doing. I think that ended up being sort of the initial run through of that middle 8-bit. But that was a bit nerve-wracking.
Do you miss recording like that? Because now you do one snare bit and then they just throw in the computer and they just sort of hit it.
Yeah, I kind of, even now when I record, and I've been doing some session work in Connecticut at a little studio there, Verizon Music, and we record everything just nice and flat, and just, but then we play with a mix, and it's really fun to just sort of take the live drums and play with the room mics and like old school, it's not sampled and it's not, it's just a great room drum sound, and then mix it. Like take what's there and mix it as opposed to sort of rebuilding it or whatever. It's very organic, and it ends up sounding really great. So I look forward to those kinds of sessions, yeah.
Those are the great days. And
right off the floor, and, just don't lose the click track, and everything's okay.
and absolute last question. Eric Carr, who was in Kiss, came out and did some stuff with Brian, wrote some songs and was it Don't Leave Me Lonely? Was that the song, or something one of those? Maybe, yeah. What was sort of the connection there? Because at the same time, Brian and I guess Jim are doing War Machine and Rock and Roll Hell for the Kiss. How did the sort of the Eric Carr?
I don't know how any of that came together. I mean,
Did you get a chance to meet him?
No, I never met him. Unfortunately, I'm a big fan too.
Great drummer.
Yeah, he's great.
Big,
he's amazing. They make some records, man. Wow. Yeah. No, I never met Eric, and I don't know what the connection was. But I know that Brian and Jim, as songwriters, they get out there, man, and network that stuff. And, everybody's looking for songs all the time. So it was probably that. Eric as a songwriter and a producer or whatever.
A little circle.
A little circle of those guys, at the time. But I don't know. I don't know how that all came together. It'd be interesting to
figure it out.
Dig into that, yeah.
Well, Brian's right next door. Let's knock.
Yeah, you can knock on the door. He's recording actually as we speak now.
I know. It'll end up on the podcast, and I'll get some kind of like cease and desist from. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. But always a pleasure. So many more questions, and that Live Aid stuff. That first of all, I wasn't aware that you did the whole hour. I knew that there was a little more than just Hall. But...
Yeah, we were on for. I don't know if it was exactly an hour, but it was a long. It felt like. But of course, it went by. It felt like 10 minutes when you were up there. The energy level was so. I remember being so nervous and just the pounding
and the heat in that.
It was just, and the sound was not great. Everything was wedges and sort of. You're one of 40 bands that day, and nobody knew what anybody else was doing. You just sort of winged it. But thank God for T-Bone Walk, and GE and Charlie Dechant, and We had a great band, and everybody was watching everybody else, and you get each other through those things.
And we got through it, and some of these bands that didn't do this stuff, like the Huey Lewis's and the Duran, maybe a little bit of regret, but you got to do it for an hour. There we go.
Good. We were fun. So.
As we say, merci. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
Always,
for having me.
toujours un plaisir. Always a pleasure.
Merci, and talk to you again soon, like this.
Yes, and if you see Keith,
yeah,
please convince him that the Boston Bruins are not a good team to cheer for. Are you a Bruins fan too, being from Connecticut?
No, but I love.
Thank God.
Keith and I went to a Bruins game a few years ago, and a guy Keith had his big, his big snow parka coat on, his big bubble coat on, and a guy, some red-faced Boston guy, and he's got a big beard, and he's got it up here, and it's like pouring all over me. He looks at Keith and he goes, "Hey, what's with the parka? You expecting a blizzard?" That's all I got for Boston.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Thanks. Merci.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Rock Talk.